It's finals week, and we're about to head to break, but that's not going to stop us from another episode of Jacket Sports Weekly.
Jacket Sports Weekly, where you can find everything Waynesburg University sports. Tune in every week to our panel as they take a deep dive into Waynesburg sports. We cover everything from football.
Turning around is Isaac Trout. Did he get the feet down? We will wait for the mark. And they call it a touchdown.
To basketball.
Ball. Got it! We're all tied
To softball.
up! Max this one. Left field. Kiss it goodbye!
Stay up to date with all your favorite Waynesburg University sports with us at Jacket Sports Weekly.
We're back here on Jacket Sports Weekly to talk about Waynesburg University athletics. It's the winter time. We've got the men's and women's basketball teams as well as the wrestling team. And of course, it's your two hosts, Logan Episcopo, Seth Adams. And Seth, the first team we're going to talk about is the women's basketball team. 0-9 start now after a huge loss at Allegheny, losing 90-53.
Yeah, it was not the best game ever. 18 different players played that game out of like our 25-24, so that's just crazy to begin with. And the shooting was just not on at all. They were 28% from the field, 3 for 21 from the three-point, and well, they were 16 for 24 from the free throw line. But I'd say this is their worst game of the year. But the Geneva game I thought was their best, and I thought they did play very well in that game. They were back and forth. They did have those quarters where they were not so great, but then they had those quarters where they exceeded expectations. So it's just like Allegheny, kind of just whatever, shake it off.
Yeah.
I say we focus more on the Geneva game, which was a lot better of a game.
Yeah, if you look at that Geneva game, it was super close.
Yeah.
It came down to the final basket. I think what really dug them a hole was the start of that game. Going in after the first quarter, trailing by 13 already.
Yeah.
I think that's what kind of not set the tone because the ladies picked it up through the second, third, and fourth quarters. But that's just a tough game. You know, you got to be able to play consistent from start to finish. And the ladies weren't able to do that against Geneva. And on the road against Allegheny, a pretty good team, just couldn't get the job done. And on the men's side of things, another team that is exceeding expectations, but recently has just found themselves in kind of a slump. You drop to St. Vincent, you lose to Geneva, and now you suffer a loss to Allegheny on the road.
Yeah, another super close game where they shouldn't have lost. And it's just like, it seems like it's racking up lately, these games where they're supposed to win and they're losing. I mean, they were leading 31-29 at half, but they had a great game, but they were 6 for 14 from the free throw line. I mean, that's killing them. That's the 7 points they get there. If they're 13 for 14 games tied, and regardless, you get another field goal, and you're right back in it, you're taking the lead, but Baker only had 8 points.
Yeah.
It was a very quiet game from almost everyone. And they haven't scored a lot compared to the first couple of games when they put up 70, 80. Now they're putting up 50, like in 48 in Geneva. I mean, something's wrong.
You look at the Waynesburg team defensively, we always know they're good. Defensively, this team is able to shut down its opponents, but it seems like the defense is picking up and the offense is starting to trail off now, which is odd because, like you mentioned, Anton Baker, 8 points. You don't see that every night. And even Jalen Davis, he only had like 9 minutes in this game.
6'7". He's 6'7", and he has 9 minutes.
Yeah. They've got a lot of games, though, coming up while we're gone away on break.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're able to pick some things up. They've got quite a few conference games. And now the wrestling team, another team that's been struggling recently or just for their season in general, they are also one of the 0-9 teams here on campus. They just had the Averett Cougar Duels, which weren't the best outing. They unfortunately lost every single match that they had, and they came close. Bluefield State University was probably their best chance at winning. They fell by 1 or 2 points.
Yeah.
How can this team turn things around?
I don't even know. They had such a tough day. They went to Penn State Barron, which is up in Erie. Okay, so that's like 3 hours away from here. And then they went all the way down to Averett, which is at the bottom of Virginia. The Penn State Barron game was on the 8th, and then they went to Averett on the 9th. I don't even know how they made it down there in that time without dying. I don't even know. Like, that's such a long time and it's a long bus ride. They got to go wrestle the next day. So props to them for that. But it's just such a tough experience. Colby Morris has been playing great along with Jesse Orban. But That drive, can you even imagine? I can't.
No.
I can't. I wouldn't be able to do anything.
I wouldn't want to be able to do that. I think the schedule definitely was not on their side.
No.
The last 2 times that they went out and they
No.
wrestled. You had the big duels against 5 different colleges. And like you mentioned, the travel from Erie down to the bottom of the state of Virginia, you're just not going to be able to compete at your best with that type of travel time.
No, not at all. And let's just run through the other ones while we're here. They lost to Ferrum 48-8. Fairmont State 47-11, Emory and Henry College 47-12, and the one you mentioned, Bluefield State University, lost 30-29, and Patrick Henry College, they lost 42-18. So it's just unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, but we're going to really get in depth and break it down here on our next segment. We're going to sit down with Ethan Spazarski, and he's going to break down the Waynesburg University wrestling team. Welcome back into Jacket Sports Weekly. As mentioned, we're going to sit down and talk about the wrestling team now. Myself, Logan, is joined by Seth Adams. Obviously, you saw him in the open. And now, Ethan Spazarski. He's joining us at the desk to talk about the now 0-9 Waynesburg University wrestling team. Seth and I mentioned the travels. We looked at it in between segments, 8.5 hours. This team had to travel from Penn State Barron to Averett University. I know you weren't on the bus. You're not a wrestler. But
last time I checked, I can confirm not a wrestler.
But what type of impact do you think that might have had on their play, going from Barron and coming down to Averett?
Oh, it definitely has some sort of impact. I mean, you're sitting on a bus, your muscles are still, you're not really active, you're not really doing much, which I'm sure for those guys, it's a wear and tear at some points because you're sitting on a bus for 8.5 hours. I can barely sit in a seat for 20 minutes by myself without fidgeting and jumping up and down. So to sit on a bus for 8.5 hours, especially to go back-to-back in meets on back-to-back days, definitely has some sort of toll, definitely maybe even more mentally than physically, because you're sitting there relaxed, not really focused, not practicing on the mats. But I think more or less the mentality, no matter what, is what you got to focus on and better yourself for. If it's going to take a toll in your mind, which it probably would, you got to be in that state to be ready. So use the first half of the trip maybe to relax, get settled, get comfortable. But then when the second half, that's when you start to lock in, talk to yourself, get your playlist out, get your music ready, get how you want to run warm-ups, how you want to do everything. Gives you a lot of time to think and be friendly, but at the same time, utilizing that time and being set in the right mentality definitely, I think, will go a long way.
Yeah, we talk about Colby Morris and Jesse Orban. They have just been outstanding for this Waynesburg wrestling team. Can you just talk about their impact that they've been having so far? Just like in general.
So I think something that's not overlooked, that is definitely overlooked by us who don't know every inch and speck about wrestling, is that the dual records affect the team overall records. That's how it works. That doesn't count towards the individual events. So when Seth Evans is facing a guy from Ohio State and puts up a really good contest against him, that doesn't count towards the loss. But individually, these wrestlers are stepping up. Jesse Orban and Colby Morris obviously are the front two, with Jesse being a freshman and then Colby being the leading senior. I think that goes a long way. Both these guys undefeated in their recent trips. Jesse's really been making a name for himself too, especially as a freshman, which is something really good to see, that he can compete with these collegiate athletes, especially from D1 all the way to D3. And that's another thing to mention. These guys are wrestling D1 to D3 athletes. It's not strictly D3, it's not strictly D2. It is everybody from D3 to D3 to D1, however you want to say it, however you want to order it. It is what it is. And something else worth noting too, like I said, the individual matches don't affect where they are competing better in individual matches. They're not competing the best in duels, which do affect the records. And in the Ned McKinley Invitational, Waynesburg was the best PAC team. They placed the best out of all 4 PAC teams. And it's not noted in there because of the duels and the overall records. It kind of throws a shadow on it, and it doesn't give it enough, the respect it deserves. So these guys may not have the best record in PAC, but they are battling out there, and that's definitely noted.
And we're going to talk about the women's and men's basketball teams having a lot of games to play over break, but the men, for wrestling, they're going to have a lot of matches, a couple duels while we're gone on winter break. What would be some expectations that fans might want to see out of this wrestling team, considering what the record is and how they've performed recently?
I think maybe an expectation you have to set for yourself is Colby and Jesse are just going to shine above everybody else. I think that's just a given at this point. I think also Seth Evans, our fearless leader, we call him Captain America up here. He is a comm major on the 4th floor, which gives us more time to talk to him and pick his brain about stuff. But he went 2-2 when he was facing D1 schools and all the way to D3. Not enough credit's being given. So on that aspect, let the guys that maybe aren't getting all the credit step up and really find a role here. Especially, this is a young team. This is a majority of this team is underclassmen, which is something you got to look forward to. There are a bunch of new faces here. So maybe while no one's looking, make it even more of an impact here and take this time. We're very fortunate that while we do work a lot while semesters and school's still in, we get a time off. These teams right now here in winter break do not get that luxury at all, which I never want to take advantage. I was a former swimmer. I competitively swam all through middle school and high school and even elementary school. During Christmas, we were in the pool swimming from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day, and we had meets too. It was so bad. I just wanted a break, and I feel a bit for these teams, but at the same time, utilize that maybe anger or sort of motivation where people are like, oh, they haven't won yet, they haven't done this, they haven't done that. Well, look deeper into it. Let that fuel you. Maybe get a few wins, maybe get some recognition, and then that just starts to boost the confidence and sends you to the next level.
So there's been a lot of the games that we talked about where Waynesburg has been kind of blown out, like 48-8, 47-11, 47-12, 42-18. How do they make it a closer game? Maybe not win every time, but maybe make it like they played Bluefield State University 30-29. How do they make games more like that?
The match, it's the most important thing for me. Obviously, now I can sit here and say that individually they're doing great, but you gotta up yourself in the dual aspect. The second-year coach, they're still young, they're still progressing, and that's something worth noting. But to me, again, once you get that confidence boost, I really think this team can take off. They just need that extra shove, that extra bit of motivation. If they're able to pick up their dual scores, because the dual scores affects more than anything. And unfortunately, again, it doesn't shine on the individual talent that we have. In wrestling, it's hard. It is definitely, a lot of sports are team sports, but wrestling could be a sport that you can use the example where it's more individual than it is at the end of the, and then it is a team-wise at the end of the day. Kind of like track and field. So, I truly believe if once they get that boost, once the team gets that in their head, all right, we can compete with these schools. Or maybe if they just didn't wrestle all these D1 schools and get their motivation bumped down a notch, I really think that opens things up, but I do believe that's all they need.
Well, Ethan, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait,
It's Logan's birthday. Right?
Oh, my God.
I completely
It's
forgot
Logan's
to
birthday.
mention it. Ladies and gentlemen,
That's gonna
it is
do it for
Logan's
this
birthday.
segment.
It's Logan's birthday. Happy birthday, Logan.
Happy birthday,
Thank you
Logan.
for all the
Thank
hard
you,
work
guys.
and everything you
And
do
that
for
great
us.
shirt, by the way. Love the shirt.
mom bought
That's
it
the
for
birthday
me.
shirt
Shout
right
out,
there.
Mom.
That's the birthday shirt.
Thank you guys again for the birthday wishes. And Ethan, thank you again for coming up talking about the wrestling team. When we come back, Seth and I are going to sit down with Joey Shirillo to talk about the women's basketball team.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. Now we got Joey Cirillo on the desk with us to talk about some women's hoops, where the last 2 games they've lost 90-53 and 77-73, a closer game in that one. But Joey, let's talk about the Allegheny game. Was this their worst game yet?
I would have to go with yes, because maybe it's just a little bit too recent for us. We're just fresh off of that 90-point win or loss against Allegheny. So I think it's one of the worst ones so far. Again, season's early. It's only been 9 games in. We'll see where the time takes us. But definitely against Allegheny, it was definitely a lower game. Your top 4 scorers, you had Dansby at 10, Moorbacher at 10 points. You had Wolf at 6, and then you had Walensky at 4. You can't have top 4 scorers and one of them having 4 points. That's not going to get you the wins. That's just straight to it. It's not going to get you the wins. It's really not. And the biggest thing is that you're now on a 20-game losing streak. How do you adjust to this? And I think the biggest thing is Coach Jones. I'm sorry to call you out, but I've been able to talk with some of the basketball players, and some of them are saying that Coach Jones is a little too soft. Might be in the locker room, might be during practice, might be even on the court. On the court, though, I don't think so. He's pretty vocal about what he wants, how he wants it done. So he's pretty vocal on that point. But again, that's what we're seeing. What we're not seeing is during practice and during halftime discussions. Is he too soft? Does he talk not enough or too much? And he's just, oh, you're doing great out there. Keep doing what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. Maybe they want, as players and as athletes, they want somebody to stand behind them and go, you know, you're doing okay, but you can do better. I know you can. Get out there. Go do that. So right now, I think it's mainly behind the coaching staff, just not pushing enough. But we'll see. Again, season's early, season's young. We'll see what happens.
I think that's a good note worth mentioning, because we've typically seen in all season, the ladies have come out flat in that third quarter. So maybe it is in the locker room. Not enough is said to be like, hey, adjust this, adjust that. And rather it's you did great, go on the second half, do the exact same thing. Because that's not always the case. Teams change in the locker room from game plan to game plan. So flashing back away from the Allegheny game into Geneva. A tough loss, a very close one, as Seth mentioned, just a 4-point loss. But what really went wrong in this game, you think? Or what, looking from the final box score, what would you say would be maybe one key thing that you'd like to point out from that game?
Well, the one key thing I'm not going to point out is this third quarter. They have done a lot. This is probably their best third quarter they have had all season. They had 21 points in that third quarter against Geneva's 13. They got closer. But I do think their biggest thing is their shooting percentages. That's where the worst of it is coming from. A lot of it is coming from that 3-point line and that foul line. It's not getting done. A lot of the numbers are below 50%, sometimes even below 30% for each quarter and each game. So I think that's the main issue, is your shooting. Now, we've talked about it before. We think that the shooting should reduce and the more paint points should be coming, which is true. They had 36 points in the paint against Geneva in this game. That was a little bit, maybe half of their points. I think it's directly half. Maybe not.
36 plus 36.
That's
72. You're one off.
One off.
That's pretty
We're
good.
close.
Half.
We're close. Calm math anyways. But again, you're getting there. The paint points are coming. I think just get those points more, and that will happen. And I think when we saw it the most was in that fourth quarter of play. Now, this is my opinion. But sitting there on the court, I was like right there taking photographs and highlights for the game against Geneva. I think I saw the best lineup yet. And I'm going to go down the line of who I think should start continuing on and maybe get more time on the field, on the court.
Let's hear it, Coach Cirillo.
All right, let's see what we got. I have Mia Hankins, Jules Moorbacher, Madison Dayton, Karen McFadden, and Marley Wolf. Those are the 5 that were on that court for, I think, the last 7 minutes of that Geneva game. And they put it close. They were up against them, and they were right there. They were so close. Granted, it did rely on a couple of penalties, the Geneva missing some foul shots, stuff like that. But they got there. They were close. They were that close. And I was really excited. I know I was standing next to Seth. We were both getting excited. We were like, yes! And it fell short. But that is okay. I think they'll be able to do it over the course of this break. I hope they don't because I want to talk about a win. But if they do, that's still good enough. We'll probably talk about it anyways. They play Penn State Fayette next week. They get a week off for breaks and studying. Maybe that will also help them, getting a week off, getting some time to relax, getting those tests and studies out of the way, because that's not really why they're here. Why would they be here for studies? But getting that stuff out of the way and focusing on their game could help a little bit more. They'll play Penn State Fayette, and then they have 4 pack games over break. We'll see where that takes them.
So you talk about Penn State Fayette. They're playing the 3-8 Penn State Fayette. And is this, Joey, could this be the game? They get that win, they break that humongous losing streak, and then maybe start a snowball of goodness after this game. Do you think this is the game that they get their first win?
I mean, I would love it for that to be the first one. Penn State, you can just say it's Penn State because, why not? Nobody's really questioning you. I think the biggest thing, though, is just they're 3-8, you're 0-9. This is probably one of the better competitions you're going to have. And it's also a team you don't play frequently. So it's kind of just one of those teams that you just see where it takes you, study them as much as you can, work on your stuff, see where it can take you. I hope they get a win. But also, personally, because I'm talking about them so much, I would love for it not to be a win and have that win come later when we come back to have a next JSW episode. But granted, they need a win. They should deserve a win. They've been working so hard at it. I think they get it.
Yeah. So Seth just talked about how that might be the best chance for the ladies to get a victory. I'm looking a little bit later down and giving you the hope for our next JSW episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Teal Tomcats could potentially be that first conference win. If they do end up beating Penn State Fayette, I think Teal College could end up being very well that first conference win. Do you think they could potentially pick another one up? They have Grove City, Franciscan, and Chatham before Teal. Do you think any of those games might be able to go the Jackets' way?
I do. And last season they were 2-23, something like that. And their 2 wins came from Geneva and Franciscan. I think they'll get a Franciscan win as well. And I hope they would get one against Teal as well, breaking their win from, or the total wins from last year, breaking those streaks of losing and all that stuff, because this team needs it. Coach Jones needs it specifically. But again, time will tell, I guess. It feels like that's all I've been saying recently, but I think they'll get it. I think if they stick to a lineup that I suggest, because I know everything. I'm just kidding. I just think that, it's been so long. We're all talking about it. It has to happen soon. I hope it does.
Oh, Joey, thanks for giving your insight and letting us know all your wisdom and everything like that. But for next segment, we're talking about men's hoops with Michael McKenzie. So don't go anywhere.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
Welcome back into our final segment here on this episode of Jacket Sports Weekly, our final episode for this semester here at Waynesburg University. Seth and I are going to wrap it all up with men's hoops with Michael McKenzie.
How's it going?
It's going great, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I like the shirt.
Thank you.
It's a nice little shirt. I know that it's December, but
I'm about to go to Florida in a few days, so I figured I'd bust it out. But
okay.
Men's basketball, 4-5 overall, 2-4 in the conference. Lost to Allegheny. Lost to Geneva, lost to St. Vincent. It's a tough streak so far for the men. Let's flash back. Let's go back to the Geneva game. What do you think went wrong in that game for the men?
I think it was the second half in particular in that game against Geneva. First half, super competitive, back and forth, and it really seemed like both teams couldn't miss a shot. Felt like we were in for a fun game, fun finish to the second half. And it was pretty much a complete opposite, flipping around. Both teams had a little bit of trouble putting the ball in the basket, but Waynesburg in particular, I just felt like that they couldn't get a consistent lineup on the floor. They kept making some substitutions, specifically at the guard spot with Mitchum going in for McLeod and then McLeod going in for Mitchum, kind of back and forth at there. I felt like that there was a lack of a rhythm in that second half coming out of the locker room. Geneva took early advantage, got out to a sizable lead, and then they were just able to hold that for the rest of the half. Specifically looking at that Geneva game, they were able to outshoot Waynesburg 43% to 33% from the floor, and 21% for Waynesburg and 41% for Geneva from three-point range. That, in my opinion, was the difference in that game. The free throws, obviously, it could be better in that game against Geneva, but that is more of something we're going to talk about, that Allegheny game. Geneva just really all areas, three-point from the field and from the free throw line, outshot Waynesburg, got more opportunities, and had more of a rhythm in that second half.
You mentioned the Allegheny game. They were leading 31-29 at half, but some very different things than what we've seen. We saw Corey Mitchum, who was starting. Jalen Davis only had 9 minutes. No Wilt. So was the rotation just completely different in this Allegheny game compared to the other ones we've seen so far? Or is it more just like a different mix-up? Are we seeing new people? What's going on?
I feel like that was more so to what Coach Racine has been doing the past couple of games. I feel like he's been mixing the lineups up a little bit, not necessarily leaving a 5 in or having a 6 set aside to get a rhythm going, trying some new things, getting some new lineups on the floor. And I feel like against Allegheny, that was more so what he was trying to do. Get new lineups on the floor, get a lot of different rotations going, even if it means sacrificing a guy like Jalen Davis's minutes, if you want to put Corey Mitchum in there. I feel like as the season has gone on, there's been a lot more trust to put Corey Mitchum on the floor. We'll see how much that's going to pay off heading into winter break. They got a couple of games coming up, and then back-to-back play right about the end of December into January. So we'll see how these next 3 non-conference games go for Waynesburg with these kind of new lineups that they're trying.
And you mentioned the games coming up. In fact, they have 6 games coming up while we're gone over break. Their first 2 are out of conference. They have Hood College and Pitt Greensburg. And then they follow up with 4 PAC games with Grove City, Franciscan, Chatham, and Teal. Michael, pretty simple, pretty easy question. 6 games coming up. What should be the expectations for the fans out there? Whether it be coming out with 4 conference wins, picking up a couple non-conference wins, what should the people expect?
I think that you need to get back into a little more of a rhythm. Your next game isn't until December 19th against Hood on your home floor. Then the next day you get Pitt Greensburg on your home floor. A couple of non-conference teams. You're going to see a little bit of different teams, different pace, different type of play. So it's going to be a good kind of switch up for Waynesburg to get a different style of play as opposed to all these PAC teams that they've been watching, so that it can be kind of a measuring stick for themselves, so that it's a game where they don't go in knowing what the other team's going to do. They know how to attack and know what to exploit. It's more of, we're going to go in there, we're going to do what we know we can do to the best of our abilities and try to get a win out of those 2 games against Hood and Pitt Greensburg. If they can do that, get back to 6-5 heading into the second longer stretch of the season in PAC play, I feel like they're in a pretty good spot heading into those games against Grove City, Franciscan, Chatham, and TL before we all come back.
And in these last couple of games, we've been playing very well defensively, only letting up 58 points in Geneva and 61 points in Allegheny. But we have been scoring not as much as the beginning of the year. Like in that Geneva game, we only put 48 up. In Allegheny, we only put 54. In that Allegheny game, Baker, who was usually our lead scorer, he only had 8 points. McLeod had 14. So what's going on offensively? Why are we struggling a little bit more than we were at the beginning of the year, putting up 70, 80 points compared to what we're putting up now?
Well, we obviously worked the game. I don't know if anybody out there was watching it, but in the Woosen stream, you could see early in the game, Anton Baker had that shoulder taped up pretty heavily. He ended up taking that tape off midway through the first half, I want to say, but you could tell that shoulder has been bothering him for a little bit, and I feel like that has kind of contributed to his lower offensive outputs than we're kind of used to. I don't know if that's the big contributor to what the rest of the flaws of this Waynesburg offense has been. There's really 3 main components of these losses recently for Waynesburg. They're dead even or down by 2 in points in the paint. When we see them win games, they're dominating points in the paint, or outscoring other teams by 6, by 10, by 12. When they're losing games, it's right around even. Against Geneva, they were outscored 30-28 in points in the paint. Against Allegheny was an even 28-28. That is not really the winning formula for Waynesburg. They like to dominate teams in the paint, but there's 2 other areas where they really need to improve. They're being severely outshot at the free throw line. Not even just their misfortunes at the free throw line, but the other teams are also shooting really well. Allegheny in particular 12 for 15 from the free throw line, 80%. Waynesburg goes 6 of 14 from the free throw line. In a game that you lost by 7, you get outscored by 6 from the free throw line. I mean, that's huge at the end of the day. So free throws, those easy gimme shots that a lot of people, they like to get draw fouls, go to the free throw line, see a couple of shots go in, and then you're starting to get the rhythm going offensively, but nobody has really been able to get to the free throw line and consistently make shots. And then the third component of this, they were outscored by 7 in the second half against Geneva, outscored by 9 in the second half at Allegheny. They had a 2-point lead going into halftime. They end up losing that game by 7. They have to come out of the locker room with a little more intensity, ferocity, and energy to be able to pull out some more wins here. But sitting at 4-5 right now, it's not where you thought Waynesburg was going to be after the start to the season, but it's not a hole where they can't climb out of.
And I think the main point, a lot of us fans looking at the game, is a free throw line. Everybody looks at the box score and they say, oh, we missed out on 8 potential points from the free throw line, which if you just look at it from that standpoint, you should have beat Allegheny because you lost by only 7, or rather you lost by 8. So how can the guys really get into a groove from the free throw line? Because it's not really a thing that can just, be taught. You can't just be taught, hey, shoot like this instead of like this. So how can Coach Fusina really get these guys in check from the free throw line?
I am going to be honest with you. I don't have a specific answer for you about how you get into more of a rhythm at the free throw line. With what Waynesburg does in practice, they try to spend at least 8 to 12 minutes shooting free throws. I feel like that's an adequate amount of time in a 2-hour practice to spend on specifically free throw shooting. You felt like there was a 2-game stretch where it was starting to manifest itself, specifically when they shot 83% against W&J, but it's tapered off since then again. So I don't have a specific answer for you. All I'm going to say is that for us up here, for all the Yellow Jacket fans out there, and specifically for the men's basketball team, you just got to hope it's something that eventually manifests itself, because when you spend 12 minutes of a 2-hour practice, 120 hour or minute practice, not 120 hour practice, that would be insane, but 120 minute practice, you spend that much time shooting free throws, it's something that you feel like is going to manifest itself at some point. And for the Waynesburg team, you hope it does.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for joining us here. Our last episode of the semester. It's a lot that will be missed here on Jacket Sports Weekly, but make sure you stay tuned on the athletics website from Waynesburg University. Find out about all of the winter athletics going on here. Will the women's basketball team pick up a win? Will the wrestling team pick up a win? And can the men get on track in terms of that basketball team? We'll be back here in mid-January for Jacket Sports Weekly and all other WCTV shows. I hope you enjoyed.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.